here.
What is going on? Welcome to TFW Live, the best kept secret in fantasy football, where we keep that week one feeling going all year long. I'm Austin Sear, and of course, joined here by my best friends, Johnny Game Time Hicks and Big Travie, getting this mock draft Monday going. And of course, here with you, Whisper Nation. How could we not be? Mike Herrick coming in the chat. Joel Wirth will be seeing in a second. Here's jumping in the chat too. We got Scott. We got Ronald Callow. We got Anthony, a.k.a. Rasta, joining us in the chat. Mike, Jersey J, a bunch of familiar faces here. Great to be with you on this American Independence Day. And if you're tuning in for the first time and you would like to be a part of a community where you know that you belong, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We are looking to grow just one more subscriber, just one more. You could be that one. And if you are tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Would love to shout you out live on the show. But we got a very special guest to bring in right now. You know him from Club FFL, Joel Wirth, coming to the program. What's going on, Joel?
What's happening, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Yeah. With us. We're going to be getting our mock draft here started in just a moment. Today, it's a 12-team half-point PPR single quarterback redraft league. We're going to get it started here in just a minute. I'm going to be drafting out of the 4, Travie in the 6, Joel there in the 7, and Johnny closing us out in the 12th spot. Joel, where's your favorite position to draft from here in 2022 in redraft leagues?
I generally like to be on the ends. This one, I just hit a random number generator and just let that decide my fate. But
nice. Wow.
If it's third round reversal, I like to be on the back end. But otherwise, I generally either end is fine.
Nice. Well, we are it's about that time now. Let's go ahead and bring in the mock draft. We got a full draft room here. Whisper Nation, great to be doing this with you. And if you haven't yet followed us over on Twitter at the Fantasy Whispers Twitter account, do that, because we're going to be sending out a tweet with the results of this mock draft going out into the Twitterverse. So if you're following us on Twitter, make sure you comment on that post when it comes up so we can be sure to tag you as well in this one and then in future ones. But Johnny, is there anything we're holding out for here? Are we ready to get this thing started?
We can get this started. Remember, no defense or kickers on this.
What's the rules? Give us the rules. What's the rules?
There are no rules, dude. It's 4th of July, baby. We don't have rules in America.
I'm have to start 3 wide receivers. So as Austin bails out in solidarity, but yeah, like three wide receivers. That's what we're rocking with. So that's the only quirk. Other than that, half point PPR, single QB. And if I've got permission, I'm going to hit start this draft.
Oh, you have permission.
Anthony coming here from Palm Springs. What's good? I love that one. Joel, love to get this first question going with all of our guests that come on. Well, first, let me go ahead and just say thank you for joining us on today's show. We are on this 4th of July. Yeah, man, we've got you there. You got your Twitter handle there at the Joel Wirth there. You can follow him over on Twitter, part of Club FFL. Where else can Whisper Nation get to know you and follow some of your work, Joel?
Mostly on Club Fantasy, FFL, but I also do some rookie profiles for the IDP guys for their rookie magazine. So that should be coming out soon. I think it's available on the site, but the publication will be coming out soon. So you can find me on there as well.
Sweet. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, we rarely get in with the IDP specialists here. So that's kind of yeah. You guys are like I don't want to say a dying breed, but it does feel
was it like ever a big thing? Don't you have to be like a big thing before
it's getting bigger? I think as people realize there's team defense isn't all that. There's more to it than that. So
yeah, exactly.
Can you tell us a little
as simple or as complicated as you want it to be?
What do you love most about IDP? What comes to mind the most when you're thinking about your appreciation of IDP, Joel?
I think it's just a chance to go more in depth than just picking a team, and half the guys who are doing or half the people who are doing team defense are streaming anyway. So there's not a whole lot of skill in that. It's if you're doing team defense, it's really mostly random. It's whoever scores a touchdown that week is probably going to lead the league in scoring. So it gives you a chance to go deeper, learn the player pool. And like I said, you can get as simple or as complex as you want. You can, go three players, D-line, linebacker, defensive back, or you can go, 11, 12 players. So
how
it's
soon?
really customizable.
I've never competed in an IDP league. How early off the board do the top defensive players start going in a redraft format?
Usually not until the 6th or 7th. Sometimes you might have a few elite players like TJ Watt might go in the 5th or something like that if you want to get really aggressive. But most of them won't go off until usually around 7, something like that.
Okay. We're getting the first round here wrapped out. I want to tap a little bit more into IDP players as we move this one through. And Whisper Nation, if you appreciate being a part of IDP leagues, let us know about that in the chat. It's always cool to hear a little of that perspective as well. But in this first round, we just got done. Johnny, you took CeeDee Lamb there at the turn. You're getting ready to make your second pick to start the second round. I want to start with you, Johnny. What are you thinking about the players you're taking here? Do you have a build in mind? Where's your head at right now?
Yeah, I was really hoping Dalvin was going to fall to me. I really wanted to get Dalvin after taking him number 1 last week's mock. Getting him at 12 would have been glorious. And then so grabbing CeeDee Lamb, I've toyed with it a few mock drafts now. So why not try and start with that anchor there? And then I got to grab my boy D Swift. I have to grab him in at least one mock this year.
I'm surprised you don't take him more often. Like, DeAndre Swift, I think he's got a legitimate shot to be a top 3 running back this year. He could be that new Austin Eckler, that new Alvin Kamara. It could happen right now. We've already seen it. We just haven't seen it as much as we'd like, but there are no real indicators holding him back, as far if you ask me. I'm surprised you haven't taken more of him, Johnny. Does it feel weird?
Well, it does feel weird having to draft him all the way in this beginning of the second. That's what's weird. After banging the drum for 3 years now that he's an underrated running back, and then now it's I was on him before it was cool. Now it's everyone expects to take him. So I was actually going between Swift and Barkley. I was trying to decide if I wanted to go Barkley or Swift.
You almost would take Saquon Barkley ahead of DeAndre Swift, Johnny? Really?
I was dabbling in it. I didn't feel great about it, but I do think that if there is a dark horse kind of outside that's going outside, the top running backs that can finish number 1 overall, I do think it's Saquon. I think that's the guy that has number 1 potential.
Joel, where are you at on the Saquon Barkley conversation coming into 2022?
I'm in on him. I've loved the talent ever since he came in the league. He was clearly held back by the just horrific coaching staff they had there. So Brian Daboll's got to be an enormous step up from what they've had with Jason Garrett running the offense and Joe Judge. That's a disaster. So I'm all in. I think that offense could be all right. I mean, it could be. I mean, they were pathetic last year. It's last in the league in touchdowns, but I think they can move up the middle of the pack. It's going to depend on how far Daniel Jones can take them, but I think they should be all right.
I think so too. I'm there with you. And if they're middle of the pack and they're getting first downs at least a respectable minus rate and not just a horrendous rate, then Saquon Barkley, who is still pretty much undisputed their number 1 most talented player on that offense. I guess here's my concern, and maybe Travis, I want to get your take bringing it on here on this as well, but I've taken Saquon Barkley and been bit multiple times. Y'all have seen me do this in our league of record where I've taken Saquon Barkley in the top 4 multiple times, both on the times when he's had season-ending injuries. And while his explosive runs are absolutely phenomenal, he's not the type of runner who consistently gets you 4.5 yards, breaks 1, 5 yards. He finds himself knee down behind the line of scrimmage quite a bit. And then he'll meet the line of scrimmage and go down, and then he breaks 1, for 60, 70 yards. My concern is that Saquon Barkley, who has been the number 1 halfback in the world, is just regressed enough because of the injuries, because of other variables impacting that step. Maybe he loses half a step, and then he's not taking these 60, 70-yard breakaway runs anymore. And he's still, though, finishing behind the line of scrimmage because he's still going for those home run shots. Am I off base on this one, or is that a real concern that could cap his ceiling? coming in this one.
I think there's stuff to be concerned about if you look at it. Like when he came back last year, the common phrase everybody's saying is like, you didn't know if it was Devonta Booker or Saquon. It wasn't. He wasn't that different looking than him. And I agree. There were times that he was kind of shaking off the rust and things like that. Nate, I also saw a couple games where he looked good. Then he gets his ankle rolled up on. Barkley is saying now that he's, everybody's in the best shape of their life, but Barkley's saying that he's trusting his knee again. He's trusting his body again. I think that's all a good thing. The biggest thing for me is I don't actually care. I mean, look at DeAndre Swift, was not very good as a rusher last year, but the amount of volume he gets in the passing game means that it's going to counteract if you're a shitty rusher or not. I don't think Saquon's going to be a bad running back, but if he is, I don't know if it'll matter because of the volume that he'll see in the passing game, the ways that Daboll's going to be creative in getting him in space. They're already saying it and puffing it up a bit. I don't want to buy too much into that, but we've already seen it out of Barkley. We've already seen that receiving piece in his career. So it's not like it's a far-fetched, pie in the sky thing to get there with Saquon. And I just think he's only 25 years old. He's an elite prospect as a running back. And he's in an offense that, we like some of their weapons, but he's definitely the best player on his team. Like
but just we're concerned if he's coming back and he's not still that prospect, that fuck prospect. He is that player. He is that good. Like he's that dude. Like he's beyond prospect right there. And then I'm just concerned that it's taken back. I did want to bring this point up because I know we love to mention offensive line caliber and how that impacts running back performances. But Johnny, you had such a great stat you pulled in last year that said the top 5 running backs in the NFL, it was like the top 10 running backs. It was an even split where half of them came from the top 5 offensive lines and the other 5 came from the bottom 5 offensive lines, suggesting offensive line caliber has a lot lower impact on overall running back success than maybe we in the fantasy football world like to think.
Yeah, it's definitely a stat that is definitely overemphasized for sure. Like people just think
like contract years, maybe.
Yeah, it's like, does it help? Yeah, of course. You'd rather have a running back that's running, behind the Eagles offensive line in theory, or, like one of these top offensive lines, because you just, it's like ex facto. It's got to connect the dots, though, right? It's like, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you can't have a good rusher or a leading rusher if he has a bad offensive line, because he could be just that good of a rusher. And that good of a runner. So
God damn it, classic Mike.
Volume. I think the volume too, like Najee Harris, and was not really good as an explosive runner last year, but got a million touches, and we're very happy with the output we got. And that's
behind a terrible offensive line too.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's that's the point we're getting at. Joel, how much do you value offensive line when you're kind of looking at your running back situation?
It's part of the calculation, but I think it's more part of the team calculation. How many I value touches, and in the draft I took Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. I don't normally like having 2 guys on the same team, but that's a two-man target tree right there. So I'm okay with that. San Fran's got a good line. It's kind of vulnerable to injury with Trent Williams being 33 and hurt. So. But I think it's something you want to take into consideration, but not overvalue. It's like bye weeks.
The other big thing too is that we generally go off of PFF's top offensive rank. Like we always look at it, we always say, oh, PFF, these are their grades of offensive linemen coming into the season, and that stat also is not very they always put out one in the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. And
little PFF hate, we got to get a little out of that always.
Well, I'm just saying that even PFF, who's great at what they do, they put out a lot of stats, like more stats than most. That isn't always it's not the same list, right? Like the top 10 in the beginning of the year is not the same top 10 at the end of the year due to injuries and actual play. So that's the other reason not to look into it too much, because even if a team is projected to have a great offensive line, that's a really brutal position and a lot of games. So that offensive line could change, 5-6 times. And then it's not all of a sudden you just picked a guy just because, he has the number 1 offensive line and not necessarily a really good runner behind it. And then you kind of shoot yourself in the foot.
Joel, a lot of it is following up on that. A lot of it is like cohesion. How long these guys are playing together. You could have 5 mediocre guys who played together for 3-4 years, and that's going to be a better line than a Pro Bowl line. So that's a big part of it. The line can be a lot better at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year.
I totally hear those points on this one, and you think you're making some really good ones here, Joel. And I'm now looking at your draft. I know you're on the clock right now, so I'm going to drag out my setup for you a little bit while you're making your selection here. And you've got no running backs through 4 rounds. Make it 5 rounds. No running backs through 5 rounds. I love this. You're the only drafter right now without a running back on their team. Jamar Chase in the round 1, followed by Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Marquise Brown, and you get Patrick Mahomes there in the 5th. Can you walk us through a little bit of what you're thinking? I really like the beginning to this build so far, Joel.
I'm a unrepentant 0 RB guy. Have been for a couple of years. It's you look at it year after year after year, the top 12 running backs, you're lucky if half of them repeat. So it's we overstate our value or our ability to predict which one of these guys aren't going to get hurt. So I would rather take the receivers, take the elite receivers, get an elite tight end, get an elite quarterback. So I know I'm winning those positions week in, week out. And I'll take a chance on the guys. I'll just collect the guys who are the backups and let them take some high floor guys and let them, take the guys that nobody else wants and let that be my running back route.
I like that thinking. And I want to just bring in some of my thinking that I've let get away from me a little bit on trying to get insurance policies for only my first round running back is actually kind of where I'm thinking about it. Cause you're right? Like you draft a running back with your first round pick or an early round pick, and there's a very good chance they get injured. Look at all of the years before this year, and that's what always ends up happening to whatever degree. It's a significant one. And I have loved handcuffs. I pushed them in the past, but only when it's an actual handcuff. Like I'm looking at Dalvin Cook and you got Alexander Madison. I would call that a legitimate handcuffing situation, but Derrick Henry, for instance, who's going to be the actual handcuff if Derrick Henry does go down? Is it a 1-for-1? Are they breaking it into an early down committee with a third down back? You don't totally know. Chris McCaffrey, similar type of thing. So when I look at that, I actually, if it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other between 2 running backs, I go with the running back that does have a clear handcuff if I'm actually interested in picking up said handcuff as well, because that is in line with what you're saying there of like, well, this guy could go down. This way you have an insurance policy on them, but I guess it's almost like melding 2 philosophies on this where you could do that. Because I do like that. I'm almost regretful of taking Derrick Henry here simply because I don't have a clear 1-to-1 replacement for him.
Well, I think Joel's setup worked out really well, so like you do it and then you hit something like this, like that looks good. And I think you can kind of do that from the middle too, which is helpful. We also, like this may be the latest. It is single QB, but we got a bunch of sharps in here. Like Josh Allen didn't go to the 4th round. We had a late QB run. So I think that's another thing that came into play here. Because I was looking at Mahomes right before you, Joel, and I was like, man, there's value here in taking him this late because you're usually not getting him this late. So, but yeah.
So Joel's here's making his 6th round pick. I want to bring it over to Game Time, who's drafted in the 12 spot, took Lamb in the 1st round with Swift, ETN, Alvin Kamara to follow. Kyler Murray, he gets the 4th quarterback off the board. And then DeAndre Hopkins, you presume, number 1 target after week 6. Johnny, what are you thinking about with your build? We touched on the CeeDee Lamb, DeAndre Swift pickup, but can you fill us in now on rounds 3 through 6?
Yeah, I'm building for the playoff push here, plan on getting Kamara back after week 6 probably too. And I honestly, like, I haven't had a chance to draft Kyler Murray. So seeing him sit there, and I figured a quarterback run was really coming. So I might as well grab my guy there. And then Hopkins, I didn't love making that pick there. You guys know what my stance is on Hopkins, but you got Brown already taken. I do like the Bateman after me is probably what I should have went with was Bateman instead of Hopkins, but I was running out of time, so I went with Hopkins.
I like the Bateman reference there. I'm interested to see what the second-year wideout can do in Baltimore with all of those vacated targets. As you talked about, Marquise Brown, now a Cardinal. We expect J.K. Dobbins, who does have some pedigree catching passes, to pick it up. We know he's recovering, though, from that lower half injury, and there's been a couple of pause buttons pressed a little bit in terms of J.K. Dobbins hitting the field. Travis, that didn't stop you, though, from drafting him in the 5th round. I know you're a big J.K. Dobbins fan of his talent coming out of college, and you like the running back situation in Baltimore, being that they run the ball so much. But can you walk me through any potential concerns you have with J.K. Dobbins, or why those are actually distractions and J.K. Dobbins is the shit and you want to have high exposure on said position?
Well, I think J.K. Dobbins, as a guy who runs the football, really talented, so that's a big part of it. And we've talked about that before. Like, maybe you don't need that. I think Dobbins, Akers, guys like that are going, Elijah Mitchell, that have these kind of question marks, Dave Montgomery, some of these guys in the 5th round. If I got to take these guys as my 3rd running back, okay, like that's when I'm okay taking them, because that's kind of the general rule I have on it. Now, I think Dobbins is one of those guys that can get to elite touch share in an offense that runs the ball a lot. And I think they've told us that's what they want to do. So I'm interested in Dobbins. I'm also interested in a guy like Akers, and some of these other guys. But again, it's just the roster construction I had to be able to take him as my 3rd running back is definitely, we're a little bit half PPR. So it's not as, his lack of use in the passing game wouldn't be as bad as it would be maybe in PPR. So some of the things that are into play when you take a Dobbins there.
Oh, give me a Rashad Penny. I'm going to take that one.
I was hoping he'd fall to me here in the 7th. I was going to swoop him up. That's a good pick.
Well, no, let's stick on Rashad Penny here just for a second. We talk about him a lot, but I think it earns more conversation. We're talking about a system in Seattle that, while has had a lot of committees at the running back position. Travis, we pulled up all of the running back Seattle's had in like the last 10 years, and you had to keep clicking the next arrow. There was a lot of pages on that list. We know Kenneth Walker, the 3rd, coming in out of Michigan State, has got a lot of talent. Player Profiler comps him to LaDainian Tomlinson, the one and only. But Rashad Penny was the number 1 running back in the NFL for the final 6 weeks of last season. He's got great draft pedigree coming in, and he's healthy right now. Joel, I've heard from Johnny and Big Travie about Rashad Penny, and I do want to hear more of it. But can I get your take on Rashad Penny, Kenneth Walker, and the run system coming out of Seattle?
I think that's going to be Penny's job if he can stay healthy, which has always been the big if. He showed last year at the end of the year what he can do when he can stay on the field. Pete Carroll, if you go back to when Penny was a rookie, he struggled to get in front of Chris Carson. So I think it's going to be Penny's job, like I said, as long as he can stay on the field, which is a pretty significant if.
Yeah.
No doubt. He reminds me right now of Darren McFadden when he was playing with Dallas, right? We've brought him up so many times where his flashes looked good, and then he had that one weird season. I got to bring that one back up where it was like the majority of the season he was active, he was rolling, he was cooking, he was good. I don't think it kept going much more after that, or I'm not sure. I got to reference that season again, but that's like kind of where Rashad Penny strikes me. He's in the perfect situation. He just needs to stay healthy right now. I know that Kenneth Walker was the 2nd running back off the board, but Pete Carroll does not care about draft pedigree. I mean, he took Rashad Penny and then Chris Carson, right? Who was running the show. So,
and he's on a team that's going to want to run the ton out of the ball. They want to run all as long as they can.
Yeah, they're not going to let them throw a whole lot over there, especially after you get rid of arguably one of the best throwers, and pretty signify that, hey, Drew Lock is just going to be turning around and hand the ball off.
Travie, I wanted to switch over here. I wanted to get your take. I got a genuine question here. I'm looking at round 7. I took Rashad Penny, but I was thinking about Gabe Davis. I was thinking about Mike Thomas. I was even thinking about Thielen, Elijah Moore, and Chris Olave. Renfro's a dude. He's just not mine. And Drake London, I know a lot of people love him. It just hasn't grown yet for me. But I was looking at a lot of these wide receivers, and it's an interesting kind of territory here. We got some young up-and-comers. We got our Gabe Davises. We got our Chris Olaves. We got our Elijah Moores. And then we got some like older time, familiar faces, and our Tyler Lockett's, our Adam Thielens, Chris Godwin I'd put in that category. We know he's recovering from the injury. Michael Thomas as well. interesting kind of group of wide receivers. Treylon Burks, we could throw him in that mix too. I wanted to get your take, Big Travie, on this stack of wide receivers right before you make your pick to fuck you up.
I think it's interesting that you brought it up because I was looking at Gabe Davis too. And he got, classic Mike's been sniping all over this draft.
He's sniping me too, dude.
Kudos to him. But Mike Thomas, look, I'm not thrilled in taking Mike Thomas. It doesn't get me really going here.
Ronald's with you.
I'll take Robert Woods here. But the point is that in all these guys, they've all got question marks. So we could run it down. Gabe Davis just really hasn't ever done it. He's got flashes. We've got, him in the playoffs. He's got some stuff down the stretch, but we really don't know. We like him. He's a rising star. We don't know. Chris Godwin, obviously the injury could be late, could be early with the new PUP rules. We don't know. Adam Thielen, look, we know he's a touchdown magnet, and we actually can kind of predict his touchdowns because he's been high in red zone usage, but he's 31. So it's, questions. Drake London, obviously bad offense, maybe poor QB play. Elijah Moore, high stock in the draft pick that was taken this year in Garrett Wilson. Renfro, I like, and I agree with you that he's a dude, but maybe not my dude. He's just one of those guys that doesn't get you going, but he's a solid football player, and I'm into that for sure. Chris Olave is a guy that's interesting. So I just think that we're in that kind of muck in this round of guys that have definite upside. The thing about Renfro is you may not like him, but if something happens to Waller or Adams, we know that Renfro is going to boom. We saw that last year. Contingency wise, he's a good pick. So
he was a wide receiver one in PPR.
Yeah, I think even with those guys healthy, he's still going to get that because that's what Josh McDaniels gives 26% target share to the slot wide receiver. Now they could move Devontae Adams in the slot on occasion. Not saying that they're going to only have Devontae Adams on the outside, but you're telling me Hunter Renfrow is, like Travis said, a really good wide receiver. People we make fun of him because his NFL bod isn't the ideal NFL bod, but this guy has been faced adversity his entire career. Used to be a quarterback because he was the best athlete on the team, and then walk on with one of the best universities. So I think Hunter Renfrow, people are sleeping on him hard, but I do understand if he's not your guy, he's not your guy. But I like Hunter Renfrow a lot. I think he's gonna surprise people.
Yeah, there's something to be said about what Josh McDaniels gives to the slot receiver for sure, but. Devontae Adams has commanded over 25% of the target market share for the last few years. So
hasn't really get that. They could both get that.
Yeah, but then there's Waller too. So again, I think if they're all healthy, I don't know that we're going to see that kind of breakdown unless the Raiders are just shocked the world and they're a lot. But God damn it, Mike, dude, it's the third guy he's done this to me for. Anyways, I really want to Dallas Goedert, obviously. But my point is back to the offensive line question. We were talking with Joel. We're talking with people. If that's the big problem with the Raiders is their offensive line. If it doesn't get gelling, if it's not good, that's something we could see bring down that offense. But I do think a shot that all three get theirs.
What do you think? What do you think here about Ronald's point? Waller is odd man out, not Renfro. Joel, do you have any takes here on the Las Vegas situation? What do you think about between Renfro, Adams, and Waller? Are you with Johnny and Travis here? Or are you kind of feeling Ronald's point here about Waller could be the odd man out?
I like Waller. I mean, the McDaniels offense has always hit the tight end pretty hard. It's been easy to when you got Gronk and Aaron Hernandez for a while, but even last year when you had Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, they still relied on the tight end quite a bit. So I don't think he's going to go away from that. Darren Waller's too good to not get targets. That's not going to happen. As long as he's healthy, he'll be involved.
Quick prediction on yardage total. Is he an above 1,200 yards tight end this year, or is he an above 900 yards tight end this year, in your opinion?
I'd say somewhere between there, probably about 1,100, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of feel that one there too. That's a very interesting storyline. Ronald didn't ask. It was Mike. Mike Herrick asked, Joel, would love your take on Singletary. This is actually a great conversation topic. The Buffalo backfield in general. We're hearing rumors of James Cook filling in that third down role, Singletary keeping the early down. Zach Moss is a name we're hearing about potentially being traded. Joel, what are you looking at in the Buffalo backfield, specifically with Singletary?
I think Singletary showed last year that he can handle the role. I think they're going to want to eventually start to transition Josh Allen out of being such a run-heavy quarterback. He's just too valuable to them. You can't be taking all those hits. And James Cook is just J.D. McKissick Jr. He's not a special player by any means. I don't think he's going to.
Oh, I love to hear that, Joel. It's refreshing. It's like a can of Sprite after a basketball game. Like you're just like
And this is the zero RB thing down to it in a nutshell, right? It's like I'm buying Singletary as the back to own in Buffalo, and if everyone's going to be afraid of committing to that, I'll jump on it. I'll take that. I'll take that risk.
Good.
Let him fall to me in the 6th round, 7th round, whatever it was. I'll take that.
I like that take on this. Travi, Johnny, do you see it differently on that? I'm personally thinking that Singletary's value is just climbing as his ADP stagnates and drops and the James Cook hype continues to grow. Maybe we'll see it cool down out of these recent bits of news. I mean, in our Dynasty League, James Cook, I think, was the 3rd running back taken off the board in the middle of the 1st round after Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. So people are like, they're jamming James Cook, but I think that might be a little thirsty. What do you guys think, Johnny and Travi? Talking the same time.
Yeah, I like Singletary. I think to Joel's point, like it's kind of like the Penny thing. He's going to get the first crack at it because of what he showed us in the last month of last year. Like, yeah, they wanted McKissick for certain things that they wanted within that offense. But there's a lot of stuff coming out now that Brian Daboll was actually throwing a little bit more than Sean McDermott actually really wanted.
Oh, really?
And what we're seeing now is down the stretch that they actually ran a lot more as they got into the cold weather, into the playoffs. Singletary scoring a few more touchdowns. So Johnny likes to get on here and say, like, well, what if Josh Allen's touchdowns regress, right? Like, what if his rushing touchdowns go down? That's got to go somewhere. And now that could go to passing touchdowns, but I think that Devin Singletary has already proved that, like, he can take a beating and do what you need him to do. So I think that's something to take a look at.
Contract year, right? For Singletary contract year.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. Again, I think we should take notice. Like, if we look at the last few years when you have that strong last month of the year, that's produced guys like Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, guys that if we were back on them the next year in fantasy, we profited. And I think that's something to look at here with both Penny and Singletary as guys that finish strong. And yeah, there's some noise coming in around these other guys. But again, these scrambling, like, I think James Cook, the way people are investing in him is like he's going to be this, like, he's going to get all this pass catching work. But it's like these scrambling quarterbacks, we see it. They just don't throw to the backs as much. And so I think Singletary is that guy on a really good offense. Yeah, they're going to throw a ton. But if there's a little bit of a pendulum swing as far as regression in that rate, then you got a guy in Singletary that's going to probably capitalize from that.
I mean, I definitely think Singletary is one of the running backs you target if you're going 0 RB. I personally probably went Penny over Singletary just because Seattle is going to run the ball a whole heck of a lot. Now, you could say the injury risk. I totally understand that, but Singletary to me has always outperformed his expectations and shown that he is a really good running back. They just need to give him more opportunities and he could do things with them. So I don't mind Singletary where he's going. I think he's a good 0 RB to go after. I just don't have all the confidence like I had a couple of years ago, because the thing is with Cook, now I'm not a huge Cook guy. I'm not, but you know me, I love my Georgia running backs, and Georgia running backs, they do produce in the NFL. And so that's the one thing where it's like Zach Moss. I mean, I was off of him since before they even drafted. I could have told you, like, he's a trash running back. But, the thing is Cook went to a really prestigious college and played running back there. So it gives me a little bit more hesitation than when Zach Moss went there. I was like, yeah, Singletary is still the best running back there. I'm not so certain on it right now. But again, I do like the fact he's in a contract year. That always, in my opinion, bodes well for players.
I know I had referenced earlier how we point to the contracts and it doesn't really mean a lot. And the data I've seen on that suggests that contract years are moot points, but it logically is just so freaking sound, right? Like, oh, you're going to be getting a deal primarily based on the performance, of what you've done, but we're going to be looking at what did you do for me recently, and this is the time to carve it out. So I hear the logical point. I will continue to usher in that logical point, even if the data doesn't actually point to it holding water, but it's just still so good and no one's calling us out. Joel, do you have any comments on that? Do you have any thoughts on the contract year point people bring in? It makes so much sense, but I've seen data suggest it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I don't know that you can really draw a conclusion from it. It's, if you want to use it as a coin flip tiebreaker, if you got two guys.
There you go.
I've been watching football for a long. It goes both ways. Some guys thrive under that pressure, and some guys will. So which one is which? You never know.
Yep,
I got you. That's a good point to make on this one, and a nice pick, Johnny. You got Jersey J on the Cole Kmet. I like that snag there.
I was surprised you're still there.
Dude, it's been a late push down for some of these players. Whisper Nation. I mean, we know we're drafting with some shooters on this one, but as Travi mentioned earlier, Josh Allen not going until the 4th round, and then we had Dallas Goedert, who was being mentioned here. Mike, saying Goedert is a steal where I got him. No lie, 9th round.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and Dak going in the 10th, like I 100% would have went with Dak in the 10th over Kyler in the 5th. If I knew that Dak was going to fall, that I really thought Dak was going to go in the next 2 rounds after I took Kyler. So, yeah, there's some guys definitely falling. A couple of guys that are going a little higher than typical, but it's all good. That's why we mock.
I think we got people who been mocking too, and are noticing some of these trends. And Joel.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, if you'd have told me we're going to get a full mock on the 4th and they were all going to be sharps like this, I'd be like, man, dude, must not be that many good barbecues out there, y'all.
Dude, don't discredit the mock, baby. There are a lot of good barbecues out there, but where would the people rather be? Right mock here.
Boys.
With Joel, with Johnny, with Travis, with my cats, doing some mock draft Monday on our 12-team half-point PPR single quarterbacks in the first week of July. And Whisper Nation, we are going to be doing our notorious draft grades after this, where we're going to have myself, Joel, Johnny, and Travi first break down our teams. You tell us who won out of those squads, and then we are going to go through the remaining 8. Give them our 1 of 4. They are they are championship contender in the playoffs, on the bubble, or outside looking in. We're going to break it down and give you one of those 4 grades here after we get the 13th round wrapped. And I'm going to make my 13th round selection right now. Ooh, Mike Gesicki. I'll take him.
Yeah,
ooh, piece of candy.
That's who I was going to take, and then I saw.
Well, you're not.
Was there and
everybody wanted to know who Johnny would take if Gesicki was gone.
It was if Cole Kmet was gone, I was going to go Gesicki.
Cole Kmet was gone.
Cole Kmet was there, so I picked Gesicki. I was giving
the first time in like 7 rounds that Mike hasn't sniped me, so that feels good.
What did you think? What does that mean? You make a mistake?
Oh, maybe.
Or maybe
maybe I should have been in on Alec Pierce here in the last round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah.
Look, he was
good. Oh yeah. Wait till the last round. We finally get you, Mike. We finally got.
But apparently, Mike, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you were going to take.
Oh, Johnny. Johnny's hurt. He's down bad after that.
Just saying. I was trying to give Austin compliments on the pick, and it was like, no.
Yeah, you
can't even do that on 4th of July. This is America. We don't give each other compliments.
No, dude. You tell each other to get fucked. So, like, what's your last pick that you're making here before you go get fucked? I love you very much,
dude. I got to roll my guy. You know it, dude. The biggest sleeper of all.
Edelman.
Campbell, baby.
Oh, Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell. I was gonna call Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell's bench warmer right now. As we all know, Paris Campbell's been rocking it in the first team OTAs. We'll see how that keeps going, pulling for him. Whisper Nation. Was that Joel?
Off-season hype.
Off-season hype. We love it. If you're not overreacting in fantasy football, are you even reacting? Well, let's get our reactions now to some of our completed mock draft. Way to go, Whisper Nation. We got another one of these in the books. 13 rounds of fun. let's go ahead now and take a look. We started with the pick number 1. How about we go in reverse order? What do you think? Johnny, you want to give us the first off rundown? Tell us how your team went, what you thought, maybe what you would have done differently now that you saw it wrapped, or if it's absolutely perfect and nothing could have been done. Let us know that too.
My team went absolutely nothing like I had planned. I hate this team.
No.
This is like one of my worst mocks, honestly. CeeDee Lamb in the first. I like CeeDee Lamb, but I don't know if I necessarily like going in the first. But yeah, DeAndre Swift, my boy, went with him in the second to pair along with Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara. I grabbed Damian Pierce all the way in the 9th, which I like that one. And then Naheem Hines, another guy I really like in half PPR and PPR leagues. So my running back room, I'm actually pretty confident in. Quarterback, I got Kyler in the 5th. I think I paid up a little bit too much for him. And then my wide receivers to pair with CeeDee Lamb, I got DeAndre Hopkins, Hunter Renfrow, Chris Olave, Kenny G, and then Paris Campbell. And then my tight end, I got Cole Kmet. My team's not as bad as I thought it was when I was like drafting, but there's a lot I would do differently, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have drafted Kyler so early. I would probably wait on quarterback. Probably grabbed a couple different wide receivers and not start it or have my second wide receiver be DeAndre Hopkins. Don't really love that. But overall, I think this team would be in that playoff hunt near the, or like on that playoff bubble, pushing for the playoffs at the end of the year. Might be on the outside looking in, to be honest with you too.
That's good. I liked Ronald coming in here. Why do you have people do their own? I've been fighting for this all off season. There are 3. You have the other 2 do it.
Whoa, dude.
Professor Ron getting a little spicy here. I mean, I think it's fine. We could play.
I like his breakdown, but then maybe we can also give our own grades.
Yeah. Why don't Joel? Why don't you? What do you think about Johnny's team here?
Is it a championship contender? Is it in the playoffs? Is it on the bubble, or is it the outside looking in?
I think it's a contender. I mean, if you're kind of at the mercy of Kamara's suspension, and I'd be a little nervous about him and Hopkins on the same team, but I think, like you said earlier, he's playing for the playoffs, and if once he gets there, that's a dangerous team in the playoffs. I wouldn't want to see that come around week 13, 14 when you're in, if I was steamrolling into the playoffs and that guy just limped in after a lousy start because he was missing 2 of his key guys for 6 weeks, I'd be afraid of that team.
I feel you on that one, Joel. What do you think, Johnny? I mean, Travi?
Yeah, I'm with Joel on this one. Like, if you look at it, if CeeDee Lamb, we don't feel comfortable taking him there, but he's definitely the guy that's like, let's say around this area, like him and Mike Evans, that are guys that could absolutely smash this year just based on volume. And I think CeeDee Lamb, if he hits, and then you get like Swift should be solid, but if you get one of, ETN or one of your wide receivers like Renfrow or Olave to pop, and that floats you to the playoffs, then like Joel said, when you get into the playoffs with this team all there, it's scary, man. And then Kmet's the other one too. Like if Kmet can be who we think he's going to be, have a little bit more touchdown positive regression, like this team has not many holes, which is really nice for 2 suspended players on your team.
Yeah, no holes, upside players pretty much at every spot. And then like Olave, you mentioned, is Hopkins and Kamara. Those guys could be at the end of the season playing their best football. And you still got Swift and ETN to start it off with CeeDee Lamb, Renfrow, and Galladay. Potentially, like you don't have any holes. This is strong. I think you did a really good job here, Johnny. All right, moving the reverse order here now. Moving back, we be going next here with Joel, who drafted in the 7 spot. We'll get the panel's grades done first before we jump into Whisper Nation. So you want to give us a breakdown on your team, Joel, and what you were kind of thinking with this build?
It's a 0 RB build, and I'm pretty happy with it. I think Chase is right there with Justin Jefferson as the best receiver in the league. Debo, he lit it up last year as a second receiver, is awesome. Yeah. Kittle, if he can stay healthy, like I said, those 2 are going to dominate targets in San Fran. I like Hollywood in Arizona, especially with Hopkins suspended for the first 6 weeks. He should have those targets all to himself. Hopefully he can catch the ball a little better this year than he did last year, but we'll see. Mahomes in round 5, I'll take that all day. In a 0 RB build, I want an elite quarterback because I'm potentially giving away 2 positions every week. So I want an elite tight end. I want an elite quarterback. I'm not compromising on those. And when I go 0 RB, I usually go wide receiver until they start to look the same. And I was at that point when I took Singletary, and he was the best RB on the board. Godwin is a spot where being our 0 RB, I've got my receiver core filled, so I can kind of. He's gonna go on PUP. He's gonna miss the first 6 weeks at least, but I can absorb that. I'm okay with that, and then I can take him, once he's 100% healthy, and put him in my flex. And then I got a bunch of guys I like as 0 RB targets. I like Darrell Henderson behind Cam Akers coming off the Achilles. I like Spiller because Eckler's great back, but he's small and he's an injury risk. I like Khalil Herbert. He's my sleeper special of the year. I wrote an article on him for the Club Fantasy. I think he's going to be the 1B to David Montgomery. I think with Getsy coming down from Green Bay, I should say, he's going to go to a 2 RB offense like they ran there. So I think Herbert's going to get a lot of run, and he was frankly better than Montgomery last year on a per touch basis. He was just better than Montgomery. Sony Michel and half PPR. I think he's going to be the goal line back in Miami, so he should get a lot of touchdown upside. And Deonta Foreman, if you're nervous about McCaffrey, you got to be in on Foreman. Yeah.
I think it's a good breakdown on this one. I like the way you hedge your bets going with the 0 RB strategy, the only one of the bunch. So a really cool example here that I'm seeing. Travi, how would you rank Joel's squad here on a championship contender in the playoffs, on the bubble, or outside looking in?
I think there's a playoff squad, and I think that it could be a dominant contender too. If the things break right in is 0 RB. Like sometimes you get these and then these guys remain backups or whatever. But I will say that your build as far as the running backs you did, Joel, especially the 9 through 13 range, like Henderson, I love. I had a tweet out a few weeks back of just how 1-for-1 he was, when he came in as a replacement. And as you lay it out with Khalil Herbert, top 10 in PFF's rushing grade, whereas we got Dave Montgomery outside the top 40. And so that's what we're talking about. And it's a whole new regime, not just head coach. We've got a whole new GM in there. And if they like Herbert more at the end of the year, we project this team to be bad. We could see a whole shift over to Herbert. And he showed Sony Michel, another guy, when given volume, really good. And then Foreman last year finally kind of broke through the Achilles curse there. So I really think, 1 to 2 of those should work out, especially if Singletary does his thing. And then the last point I wanted to say, because you drafted Deebo Samuel, and that's kind of where he's going, in that range. And it's just been this up and down thing, this saga with him. And I was trying to wrap my head around where he's at. He's a really good wide receiver, but we're kind of discounting that because of all the rushing he did last year. And PFF was top 5 in their receiving grade. Take away his carries, he's a good wide receiver. And if you get Trey Lance to take a step forward, I think Deebo Samuel could be the key to Joel's team here, because as you go, as he said, if you go 0 RB, you're trying to get dominant at the other positions. Right. So if Deebo can swing and hit, especially with Kittle, I think that this team could be really nasty.
Mm-hmm. Any contrasting opinions, Johnny, or are you with Travis on this?
No, I'm with it. Yeah, I think as a playoff team, and then depending on injuries and whatnot and hitting at the right time, I think this could be a real dangerous team.
I do too. I think the concerns on Patrick Mahomes are a little overblown. I think that the vacation of Tyreek Hill is an issue, but I think he knows how to play football. I think he also is getting used to being a superstar in life. And I think Patrick Mahomes is so talented and is so good. I think we see a bit of a resurgence from Patrick Mahomes coming in this year, even if he doesn't have the best weapons he's had his career.
I almost think it's a benefit, right? Because then teams are almost with Tyreek, it's oh yes, we have to respect the deep ball because we know
they got
how good
destroyed
Tyreek
by cover 2 last year because they took that away and then they had nothing else.
Right. And so, but then Pat started to figure out towards, after a couple of weeks, he was oh, this is okay. This is what I need to do. Whereas now there is no big threat like that. I mean, we all joke about MBS and we do think MBS will be that guy. But teams are not going to respect that because it's almost okay, go ahead. I bet you he's going to drop it. And so it's it only takes a couple of those. So I do think, like you said, Pat Mahomes sees a little bit of a resurgence there.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. And I think this is a cool team. I'm right there with you, Johnny and Travie, for Joel's squad of it being firmly in the playoffs. Moving on now to Big Travie, who drafted out of the 6th spot. Break it down for us, Travie.
Yeah, I had ideas of grandeur when I drafted in the 6th spot that I was going to go ahead and get all these different awesome players, and I honestly think it's kind of a lukewarm setup, but we'll see how it went. So I went Cooper Kupp 1-6. Look, he's obviously super good at football. If you took away 40% of his output last year, he'd still be the wide receiver 2. So we're still dealing with someone that's really, really good, even with regression baked in. I went with him as my first wide receiver in the first round. Then Allen Robinson. I'm just really in on the Allen Robinson resurgence. I think he's at a really big discount here, and I think he could be a huge touchdown guy for the Rams. And everybody's talking about OBJ, but remember, OBJ tore his ACL in February. So we need to just relax. Even if OBJ comes back to the Rams, I think Allen Robinson can have a fine season. And so the rest of my wide receivers, then it was just about kind of trying to fit some pieces together, some upside with Michael Thomas. I think a consistent floor if Woods is ready for week 1. His ACL was a lot earlier in the year. Treylon Burks is bad. Let's say he's bad. They don't have anybody else. I think Robert Woods could be yet again a huge discount in fantasy. And then MVS, Rondale Moore, and Crowder, really just upside guys on good offenses. Maybe not Crowder as much, but I think Crowder has been really good, but despite being on really bad teams with bad quarterback play. So get him on a good team where he could be a plus Cole Beasley. I think that could be really good. So I've been in on Crowder late. Rondale Moore, it's really just going to be, he's one of those guys that'll be on the roster bubble for me. As we get through the first 6 weeks without Hopkins, if they don't use him in the slot, then it's okay, sayonara. I don't know what to do with you. But that's just kind of a good faith thing. And then the running backs, man, I just try to go a little robust through 5 rounds. Saquon is my first. Connor. I trust Connor's usage. He just has to be on the field. And then J.K. Dobbins, a little bit of upside from the RB3 position. And, if I'm looking at these guys, yes, Saquon's probably the most injury prone, but Connor's pretty injury prone too. So I snagged Darrell Williams, who's a competent enough pass catcher, and he has been in good offenses before, that I think he kind of does the deed. And then, steady Eddie, Zach Ertz. I think he's going to soak up some good usage there, and he did down the stretch as well for Kyler Murray, and they gave him big money. So I think he's a big part of their offense. So
there we go, breaking it down. I like to top on this one. Johnny and Joel. I'll start with Johnny on this one. Travis' team here got a strong set of positions. Maybe running back, he's pretty solid there. Wide receiver, Kupp and Robinson to hold it down. Then Michael Thomas, Woods, Valdez-Scantling, Rondale Moore, Jameson Crowder. Hope to see one of those guys carry in for that 3rd spot. Got a stable of them to choose from. And then Zach Ertz, I like that pick up there later in the 9th. How are you looking, Johnny, at this squad in a rankings perspective? You got him as a championship contender, in the playoffs, on the bubble, or outside looking in?
I'm in the middle of in the playoffs and on the bubble on this one. And I strictly say that because I just am not a fan of J.K. Dobbins. I don't think that I understand they run a lot, but it's not the touches that he gets aren't the good they're not the money touches. Those go to Lamar Jackson. And he's not getting the goal line. And you're going to require a lot of home run hits with Dobbins, I feel, this year. And then I do have some more concern. I heard some things about the Arizona backfield from John Gambadoro that made me pretty nervous about. I do think James Conner ends up being one of those running backs that's in the dead zone that ends up frustrating people just because. So Darrell Williams, they brought in because they really do like his pass catching ability. And they're saying that between Darrell and then Eno also, who actually has been improving on all the things that they wanted him to improve on, at least this far in camp, they do like his progress. So they are saying that, Darrell could actually, in fact, take the Edmonds role. And he's actually been pretty healthy through his career. And then that would limit Connor a lot. And, Darrell is a big running back as well. So we could see some touchdown regression coming from James Conner if they don't want to use him around the goal line as much because they are worried about his injury concerns. So that's just where I just get a little bit. But if both those things pan out, Dobbins does get his home run stuff and then Connor continues to be the running back that we saw last year, which was a major steal, then Travis is definitely in the playoffs with this team.
I hear those points. How about you, Joel?
I think this is really kind of a mirror image of Johnny's team, right? I mean, Johnny's got the suspension issues, but Travis got a lot of injury risk.
Yeah.
And I love these guys. I love Saquon. I like James Conner. I love Dobbins. Michael Thomas, who knows? But if he decides he wants to play, the talent is there. So I think this is a team that if he can make it through the season unscathed and he gets into the playoffs, there's a lot of talent there. That's a dangerous team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. I think that the amount of question marks that I see with these players makes me have a question mark for the overall ranking. I'm with Johnny on this one just because the ceiling we know is through the roof on this. Michael Thomas, we're asking what's his role going to be like in New Orleans. Robert Woods playing for a new team coming off a big injury. Malcolm Valdez-Scantling, a lot of hype. We love that if it comes through. But again, we're asking what his role in Kansas City is going to be. Rondale Moore, similar types of questions. So the ceiling is there. I love playing for the upside. You just take the question marks that come along with that upside as well. So that's how I see that one.
Yeah, I just want to defend one really quickly, J.K. Dobbins, because you said he doesn't get money touches. He had 8 touchdowns in 2020. 6 of those came in the last 6 weeks when it was down the stretch and he was averaging 5 yards per carry. So I do think he will get. I think he will get money touches. So
you got an injured running back in front of him. That was why he started to get that, because they had nobody else.
Their starter. So. Okay, but you tried to say it was Lamar Jackson, and he played.
It is Lamar Jackson is the rushing quarterback, and he is going to rush in more often.
8 touchdowns is a lot of touchdowns, Johnny.
Is that how many?
How many touchdowns? How many rushing touchdowns did Lamar have 2 years ago?
I don't know, but I'll tell you that 6 out of 8 of his rushing touchdowns, J.K. Dobbins came in when he was the starting running back. So
he had 7.
So 7, and then how many last year?
2.
So
they're going to run a ton, dude. That's what I'm saying.
That's kind of Lamar Jackson only had 2 rushing touchdowns last year.
He was injured.
He was injured a lot.
Yeah. But my point is Lamar will run it in. That's nine touchdowns that you're taking off the board is a lot in 2 years. That's my whole point. But people can be on J.K. Dobbins. That's cool. I'm just not.
It's an interesting one, right? Because it's a guy who's got talent to go in the first 3 rounds, but you're getting him outside of that. That's why we will see. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to see now about my team where I win the 4th spot. Took Derrick Henry. My path on this one was I was going to go a little bit of running back anchor. I wanted to go deeper on the wide receiver train. I was stoked to pick up A.J. Brown, who I see as potentially being a vein with some real upside. And DK Metcalf, man, people love to talk shit on DK Metcalf, and I think it's a little bit out of left field, even in a really weird 2021 season with multiple quarterbacks, Russell Wilson being out, Russell Wilson coming back early despite the hand. In half-point PPR, DK Metcalf was still a wide receiver 1 as the number 12 in half-point. And he was a wide receiver 1 the year before that. We had Dwayne McFarland on the show a few weeks back talking about a wide receiver's propensity to finish as a wide receiver 1 or 2. Having previous finishes as a wide receiver 1 or 2 is going to be a good indicator. And DK Metcalf just has the physical build where I think he can overcome a lot of challenges. One of the few wide receivers that has that ability. So I have no problem picking him up as my second wide receiver. He does have that wide receiver 1 upside and mid wide receiver 2 floor as I see him. Kept those wide receiver pickups going with Amari Cooper in the 6th, who is going to be the number 1 in Cleveland, regardless of who's throwing the football. And I was stoked to pick up Chase Claypool there in the 8th. I was going back and forth between Chase Claypool and Brandon Ayuk. I think Ayuk's going to have a better year. Fingers crossed for my dynasty team. But Claypool, from a ceiling perspective, is just really, really exciting. He's got that prototypical wide receiver build. Big Ben is out of Pittsburgh now, whether it is Trubisky or Pickett chucking the rock. I think that's a improvement for Chase Claypool, and I'm excited to see what it's about this late down. Kadarius Toney, we spent a lot of time talking about his play style and the upside that he brings, so having him as my 5th wide receiver was not a problem. Derrick Henry, like I said, number 1 running back, and then get Cam Akers and Antonio Gibson as my 2nd and 3rd running backs. Number 1 on their team with upside play style. Cam Akers is coming back. He's going to be that number 1. Yeah, we'll have to see how he performs, but given the offseason, and he was healthy-ish to be in the playoffs and win the Super Bowl there, we'll see. We'll see. But I like him there with the depth behind him with Antonio Gibson, who has, again, been a back-to-back RB1. We know we have J.D. McKissick and Brian Robinson over there, but Antonio Gibson is still a good running back. He's still been getting a lot of volume, even when they had other options over there. I know the chatter is dissuading, but we'll see. I think that what he's done in years past is nice to look at when you're making predictions moving forward. And then Rashad Penny, we talked about him having 6 weeks to close out the season as the number 1 overall running back. My quarterbacks, I took Trey Lance in the 10th for an upside swing, and then Matt Stafford as a floor play in case Trey Lance isn't as good as we think he is, or Jimmy Garoppolo stays behind center. Matt Stafford was a top 5 quarterback last season. He's got another year of development with, I'd say, even better weapons now with him there, with Van Jefferson still as at number 3, but Allen Robinson coming in to be that number 2 to start the year, which I think is an improvement even over Robert Woods. And I think Robert Woods is really good. Then James Robinson is my 5th running back. So if he comes back later and he starts playing anywhere close to how we've seen him start out his career, that's going to be a really nice piece to get on late. And then Mike Gesicki there is my tight end, picking up in the 13th round. So I think it's got decent ceiling. I think it's got decent floor. I was really happy to get the 2 quarterbacks on this. I think that kind of hedges most of the concerns that I have of taking just quarterbacks, or excuse me, just running backs and wide receivers through the first 9 rounds.
Yeah, it's like when you were talking about concerns for these guys, it's like then you look at the roster. I mean, like similar back to the Dobbins thing where it's like you just had like, okay, Gibson, all these questions, like you had him as your 3rd running back. Okay. Like if he's questionable, like, okay, move on to Penny. To me, this is the team of like the patented, like the talent will win out team. Like, because all of these dudes are studs. Like if we go down the line, AJ Brown has questions, DK has questions, Cooper questions, Claypool, Tony questions. They're all really fucking talented. Like running back, same thing. Like I think all these guys, Akers, Gibson, Henry, I think they've got questions, sure, but they're talented. So when you're taking a swing at like all these different guys with the huge question marks, as long as they're talented guys, we see that play out and in big ways. I think your swings can be really big. So for me, I think you're a contender, especially with the Trey Lance thing. Like if Trey Lance pops, like you're going to smash. I would imagine with this roster. If he doesn't, then I think Stafford's going to be just fine to float you as like a playoff team. So I'm in on this team.
What about you, Johnny? Quick grades on here before we get to Whisper Nations.
I'll say this: as of July 4th, I would be in on this team. I think this is like a contender team. But I do also look at this team, and in my back of my mind, I just see that GIF of like the race car at the starting line, and then as soon as it hit, like it's green, and then all the wheels just fall off. And and the only reason I say that is just because Derrick Henry, we've seen him already get injured, and he's already had a lot of mileage. He could go down. Cam Akers, he could just be bad now because he has a torn Achilles. Gibson could just
full committee.
Yeah. So it's just like that's the only thing.
Penny gets hurt.
Right. Yeah. And then it's like, and then the wide receivers, it's like, okay, what if AJ doesn't get to his ceiling? What if DK struggles like he did last year with these backup quarterbacks? It's just, but again, as of right now, I'm in on this team. I like this team. I think it's probably, personally, I think it's the best team of the 4 of us that is drafted. But I also do see a world.
Good point. Yeah, I see that. What about you, Joel? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the talent's there. I think there's some issues structurally that I don't like. I would go for a tight end earlier than that. I don't like Gesicki at all. I think he's gonna be the odd man out with Tyreek and Waddle there. But he's certainly talented. But
it's really
James Robinson, I don't want anything to do with him. He tore his Achilles in November, December. He's not coming back this year.
Cam Akers tore a day before training camp and then was back in the playoffs.
Day before the Super Bowl, dude.
Yeah.
When he was back.
Yeah. I don't
understood.
Think
I don't like Robinson. I don't like Akers either. I just don't like. I'm off guys running backs who tear their Achilles. There's just Deonta Foreman's the only guy who's ever gotten through that, and it took him 2.5 years to get back to what he was. So, and I don't necessarily like taking 2 quarterbacks at that early in the draft, but that's like I said, those are my issues, not yours. So, I think it's.
You think early round 10 is that too early to start taking quarterbacks?
I think it's too early to take a second quarterback. Yeah, but like I said, the talent is there. I love AJ Brown. I love Metcalf. Like I say, Antonio Gibson is so overrated. He's underrated now at this point. That's the hate on him has gotten way too thick. That's ridiculous. To get him in the 5th round, that's even for a 0 IB guy, that's stealing.
We'll take it. So before we jump in, final answer: championship contender in the playoffs, on the bubble, or outside looking in?
Playoffs.
Yeah. All right.
Definitely with playoffs.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the playoffs. I do think you'll get it.
You're all dropping me down now after you listen to Joel.
No,
yeah, we're doing that. We're doing that.
I said it was I didn't say I was gonna
You
make
want to crown his ass and crown him, dude. Jeez.
dude. Jeez.
Moving on over to the Cat's Pajamas, who's in the 101 spot. He takes Jonathan Taylor to start the draft, builds out his running backs more in rounds 3, 5, 6, and 7, taking Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Miles Sanders. He gets Terry McLaurin to be his number 1 wide receiver in the end of the second round, Mike Williams to pair in the 4th with Sky Moore in the 8th, Alan Lazard in the 9th, and Devontae Parker there in the 10th. DJ Shark in the 13th is his last selection and wide receiver. He takes Tom Brady in the 11th with Pat Freiermuth as his one and only tight end there in the 12th. We'll stay with Joel here. I'm looking at a team that's pretty well balanced. An emphasis, though, on running backs, which might have hurt him a little at wide receiver if I'm just taking a first glance at it. How are you looking at this at Cat's Pajamas Squad, Joel?
Yeah, I agree with that. The running back talent is there, and as a 0 RB guy, this kind of gives me the shivers, but he's kind of covered himself, so he should be okay. But I just don't see a third wide receiver. I don't see a tight end I want to start. Sky Moore's got all kinds of talent, but I think those targets in Kansas City are going to get so spread out that none of those guys are going to be weekly starters. I don't trust Lazard. I'm a Packer fan. I don't trust Lazard. I don't think he's a starting wide receiver. I don't see a third wide receiver here or a tight end I'm comfortable starting. So this team would make me really nervous.
All right. So what of one of the 4 grades, what are you giving this one? On the bubble, out of the playoffs? Where you at?
I think this is an out of the playoff team.
Out of the playoffs. Johnny, Travis, what do you think?
I can see the concern there, especially if you waited forever, got Brady. I think the value is great, but what if we're in that year that we talked about with Rich Rebar, where it's the wheels start coming off a little bit? I would say it's on the bubble because I do think a team with Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, who I think are going to smash this year, and Brady, I think should float you enough to get in, and then you can try to figure some things out. But the wide receivers scare the shit out of me for sure.
Final grade?
On the bubble.
Johnny, what about you?
Yeah, I'm actually, I would say on the bubble on this, or probably out of the playoffs on this one. I actually do think, I'm fine with Terry McLaurin and Mike Williams. I'm actually more concerned with the running back stable because you're going to start Jonathan Taylor, you're going to start Aaron Jones, and then it's all the rest of the 3 running backs, they're a dice roll. You're going to be which one should I start each week? You're going to be Monty, Edwards, or Sanders, and it's I don't know. And then you can't really trade any of those guys because they're not going to have good enough value to try to trade. The one thing I will say is it's nice if, of anything, I don't mind going into my actual season weakest at wide receiver because I can, you can pick up wide receivers the easiest of any position off the waiver wire, off of, when you get matchups and things like that. So my actual concern was the running back stable. But yeah, that's where I would go. I'd say on the outside.
I am going with on the bubble for TCP. Moving over to Dirty Jersey 25 in the 2nd spot takes Justin Jefferson. More wide receiver pairings in the 3rd there with T. Higgins, Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 5th, Christian Kirk in the 8th with Jacoby Myers as his 5th wide receiver in the 10th. He gets Javonte Williams as his RB1 in the 2nd with Josh Jacobs to pair in the 4th. Cordero Patterson in the 7th, who's just a running back now. They took away his wide receiver designation. Ramondre Stevenson in the 9th with Kenneth Gainwell to close it out in the 13th. He gets Joe Burrow to QB for him in the 6th with Kirk Cousins as a backup plan, and Dawson Knox fell down to the 11th round on this one. So that's pretty good distance there. Johnny, we'll give you the first breakdown and the grading on Dirty Jersey squad.
I really like this team. I mean, I'm not super high on Javonte or I'm not really high on any of these running backs that he got, but I do think that they pair really well with this team. His wide receivers are absolutely stacked, besides Christian Kirk. And but I think the running backs will work for this stable, and then pairing getting Joe Burrow. So you get the double dip with T. Higgins, and you have Justin Jefferson with Cousins, so you could play matchups there. I am a big fan of this team.
Championship contender in the playoffs, on the bubble, outside looking in.
I think he's in the playoffs.
Okay.
I would say he's in the playoffs.
How about you, Big Travie?
Yeah, I agree. He's in the playoffs. I would agree with the concerns at running back, obviously with Jacobs, and you're just hoping that Vegas is going to ride him into the ground by not picking up his option. Williams, I think, is still getting a little steamed up for me. Like the upside is clearly there as a top 5 back, but Melvin Gordon has been good. So like we can't really draft it at that point. But I think, like as Johnny said, you've got such good talent. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown as my wide receiver 3 is awesome. So like it's top heavy. If his wide receivers stay that for the whole year, that's really good. We know injuries play into it, so that's going to be some of it. Dawson Knox, I'd like another tight end instead of Kirk Cousins. I think you'll probably be okay with Burrow if you want to ride that wave. But there's some big brain stuff Johnny's talking about, trying to play the matchups every other week. This isn't best ball, but I see what Johnny's saying. Like you could definitely
Jay comes every show, so
you
he'll
could,
be getting it right.
You could stack some matchups, but I think it's a playoff team. I really like. We just need to see Burrow run some more. If Burrow runs some more, this team's a contender. 1 year removed from the injury, he could run a little bit more. But
so remind me again, what was your final grade?
Playoff team.
Playoff. How about you, Joel? In the playoffs, contender, on the bubble, or outside looking in?
Yeah, I think it's a playoff team. I love the start. I think that first 4 is fantastic with Burrow. I think that's awesome. Kind of went sideways for me after that, but I think that top 4 should be enough to carry him. I like Christian Kirk. I think he's going to get a lot of volume. I love Ramondre as a 0 RB running back, so I think he should be all right. I don't like Patterson. I don't want to touch Cordell Patterson. I don't know what his job is. I don't know what his role is. I don't know if he can stay healthy. He's like 32. I mean, we hate 30-year-old running backs, and the dude's 32, and we're still expecting him to make it through a season. And like Travis said, I don't see a tight end I want to start here on a weekly basis either. But yeah, I love that start. That first 4 is fantastic.
Final grade for you?
Playoffs.
I'm with you there.
I think they'll carry him.
Mm-hmm. I think he's going to get carried too, and I think he did a good job of covering his other bases through the depth pickups and the way he was able to hedge some of these concerns and question marks of certain players by picking up other guys in down the draft. I'm in the playoffs for Dirty Jersey 25 as well. Love you, Jersey J. Moving over now to Rastafarian. I think this is Professor Ron, right? And the third spot.
This is Anthony.
Oh, this is Anthony. Excuse me. Anthony there in the third spot takes Christian McCaffrey, gets Nick Chubb as his second RB in the third with Tyler Algier in the 10th, Mark Ingram in the 12th, J.D. McKissick there to close it out in the 13th as his fifth running back. His first wide receiver is Keenan Allen selected in the second, Jerry Jeudy in the fourth, Brandon Cooks in the fifth, Brandon Ayuk coming into his third year there in the 8th, Russell Gage in the 9th with Jamison Williams, wide receiver for Detroit in the 11th round. Dalton Schultz is going to be his tight end, who he selects in the 6th, with Russell Wilson as quarterback. He takes there in the 7th. Looks like he was drafting for value, Travi. I'm not really seeing any holes. What are you seeing here looking at Rastafarian's squad?
Yeah, it's kind of like when we joke around. Like, this is the missionary position, it feels like, for a lot of stuff. Like, I think CMC's great, and he could break fantasy for you. I think Wilson has some upside. But, like you paired McCaffrey with Chubb. I think that's a perfect pairing. If you're worried about McCaffrey, you go get Chubb, who what he's gonna do in your RB core. So that solidifies it. Then I look at the wide receivers. I love Keenan Allen, probably declining just as far as efficiency and like where he's at in his age, just probably on the downtick. That's fine. Jerry Jeudy. Nobody's scaring me a lot more than Jerry Jeudy this year because I think Tim Patrick's been good. We know what Sutton is as far as the play type with Wilson. So that's why I get a little scared off. But Brandon Cooks, again, like you take those two guys, you take Cooks, you're going to be set at wide receiver, I think. And then the upside shots with Russell Gage, I thought was really good. And then also with Tyler Algier, a couple of those in 9th and 10th were good picks to kind of, if you're like kind of lukewarm at the top. So Dalton Schultz, again, like not a huge athletic profile, but going to get a ton of volume. So we like him in fantasy. So again, outside of Christian McCaffrey, there's not a lot that you're like, oh my God, this is like, making me hard. But this is going to I think it's a playoff team. And it's probably, more leaning towards the bubble, but it's a playoff team.
How about you, Joel?
Yeah, I think this is a bubble team, and it really leans heavily on McCaffrey. I think if you look like Keenan Allen in the 2nd, there's guys I would have taken ahead of him. I'd like Chubb in the 3rd. I'm with Travi on Jeudy. I don't trust that at all. But then, Cook's behind him. He could be your wide receiver too. That could be just fine. I like Schultz. I like the volume. I may be the only person on fantasy Twitter who doesn't like Russell Gage, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. I think this team is really leaning on McCaffrey.
Mm. So championship contender in the playoffs, on the bubble, or outside looking in? If I missed that one.
So it's a bubble team.
Bubble team. That's right. Okay, Johnny, how about you?
Yeah, I would say bubble or playoffs. I would lean a little bit more into the playoffs because I do think McCaffrey comes back and has a pretty solid year. Maybe not as much as he's had over the last few years, but I do think he stays relatively healthy and gets you through the season. So I would say more like limping into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm playoffs to bubble.
Yeah.
Playoffs minus for me, kind of there. Russell Wilson, I'm hopeful. Jerry, I'll leave it at that. Playoffs minus, bubble. Bubble is really where I'm at with Rastafarian. All right, moving on now to Classic Mike, who is doing a good job sniping Travie and me.
Classic Mike and the boys,
spot.
dude.
That's what he does. Takes Austin Eckler in the 5th with Leonard Fournette and Breece Hall as his second and third running backs, rounds 3 and 4. Melvin Gordon is going to be his 4th running back, and Rachaad White presumably then would be his 5th, who he takes in the 12th round. He gets Tyreek Hill to lead his wide receiver core in the 2nd, with Darnell Mooney to back him up in the 5th, Gabe Davis in the 7th, Jarvis Landry in the 10th, Tim Patrick in the 11th, Alec Pierce rounded out in the 13th. Justin Herbert's his quarterback. He selects him in round 6, with Dallas Goedert being his tight end in round 9. All right. So, Joel, I'm looking at, again, a running back what's the word I'm looking for? Okay. Yeah, running back robust. Yeah, prioritize. That's what I was looking for. Running back prioritized team here with Austin Eckler, Fournette, and Breece Hall. 3 of the first 4 selections, all running backs. What are you looking at when you take a look at Classic Mike's squad?
I look at this team and I don't see a wide receiver 2.
Because they're all wide receiver 1s.
I mean, I've been on the Gabe Davis train since he was a rookie, but his hype has gotten even beyond what I want to pay for it. He's still a second receiver to Steph Diggs, and that's, with Josh Allen, how much volume does he actually get? I think we're pumped. I love seeing that playoff game, but I don't know that that's sustainable. Mooney, yeah, he's going to be a wide receiver 1 on that team, but how much are they going to throw? This team would make me nervous week to week. I think it's a bubble team.
Bubble team for Joel. Johnny, what about you?
I think it's a playoff team. I don't mind. I mean, yes, I do agree. Like, you look at the wide receivers as of right now, and you're not super excited. But I will say, like, I do think Darnell Mooney will surprise people. I think he could be the Debo of this year. He's got the speed. That offense is going to be quick with getting the ball to him. You use screens, and they're building a really good relationship with him and Field. So I do think, and they're going to be down a lot. So I do think that Mooney will be actually usable. Gabe Davis, again, I do like Gabe Davis. Maybe it was a little higher, but you certainly are making that swing there. And, Patrick a little bit lower. I think he'll be usable. People don't realize how good Patrick is as a wide receiver. So I think he'll be in the playoffs. I don't know if I'd say it's a championship level because the wide receivers aren't to that level, but I do think he'll win enough with Herbert and the other pieces that he's got that it makes it a playoff team.
How about you, Big Travie?
I'm struggling with this one because I would agree with Joel that the wide receivers are like even Tyreek Hill. Like I love Tyreek Hill and he'll get targets, but where are the pop games coming from with Tua? Like
I don't said with Waddle last year.
I don't know if we're going to see that because, as Johnny just said, Waddle demands targets too. So for that to be my wide receiver anchor, so to speak, here, and then go Mooney. But again, Gabe Davis would have to pop. You're just relying. You're very thin at wide receiver to rely on guys to hit. But as Ron was kind of saying in the chat, like there are wide receivers on the waiver. I just wonder, and we're in half PPR, so you can kind of make up. And what that means is if his running backs are all hitting, all 3 of them, then I think he'll be fine. He'll be a playoff team. For now, I'd put him in the playoffs. I like Goddard. I like Herbert. So I'm looking at the other parts of his roster are really good. And so if wide receivers where he's thinnest at, but he can get a guy like Mooney or Davis to hit, then he can play kind of like mix and match. I think Patrick's got good upside down there in the 11th, and Landry's a guy that should soak up targets too. He has done it every time in his career. So I think there's ways he gets there. He's got some outs at wide receiver. So I'll go playoff team.
Yeah, I'm in the playoffs. I'm playoffs plus for Classic Mike's squad. while I am not sure what the weekly wide receiver lineup is going to be each and every week, I think he's got good options to pick from on this of where he's at. I think they bring some pop, and if one of those three could pop, I think he could cover some of the other wide receivers, and he's got a lot of options of who could pop. And I think he's got a killer trio of running backs: Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette, and Breece Hall. I mean, I think Breece Hall is going to be a top 15 running back. We have Dave Kluge on a couple weeks ago who has Leonard Fournette as his third or fourth running back as is, and there's a lot of reasons to point to him as a top 5, and Eckler as well. And then Herbert and Goddard. Those are kind of the X factors for me. And I think Goddard, I say it all the time, like this tight end's not going to be a problem for you, but he's not your answer. Goddard is flirting with answer level for me. If it goes a couple of ways, we'll see. I just like this team. I think he's got some options, and I think it's kind of got some upside for it as well. Moving over here to the 7th spot with the 8th spot. Thank you, Travi, with Brocal 38, who takes Devontae Adams in the 8th spot. Gets his second wide receiver, DJ Moore, in the 4th. Adam Thielen, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, in the 9th. He with his 5th wide receiver. He doesn't take a running back until round 3 with Ezekiel Elliott, Damian Harris to pair with his number 2. Ronald Jones, Marlon Mack in rounds 10, 11 with Williams there in the 13th. He gets Mark Andrews, second tight end off the board in the 2nd round, and is with Albert O in the 12th, tight end out of Denver as his number 2. Lamar Jackson is his quarterback. He takes him there in the 5th round. Who did I start off with on this last of these big Travis? So Joel, I went Joel. Sorry, Johnny. How are you looking at Brokehouse squad here, who delays on taking a running back until round 3 and kind of goes a little bit of a value-based draft? It's almost looking like. What do you see here, Johnny?
I think this is a contender team. I love this team. I think that look at there aren't any holes. I mean, maybe you could point to wide receiver with Treylon Burks being there and Garrett Wilson as like that, and whether or not Adam Thielen can hang on for another year. I get that, but I think that with the running backs getting Ezekiel Elliott in the 3rd steal, I think Harris, people will continue to sleep on him, even though he just produces. He gives you fantasy points. That's what you need. So, and then I'm a fan of Ronald Jones over CEH, and then Marlon Mack is just a wild card. The thing is like, I do like Dameon Pierce, but we do know that Lovie Smith, if you go back to his days from Chicago, he is a one running back kind of guy. And so if he does choose to go with just Marlon Mack, that's an absolute steal all the way down there in the 11th round. So I think that this is and then again, double dip of Lamar and Mark Andrews, who I do think could get back to his days before before Brown kind of popped off. Yeah, I like this team a lot.
You said in the playoffs?
I think it's a contender.
Oh, contender team for you. Okay. What about you, Chavi?
Yeah, I want to make it a contender. My problem is that the guys are like the guys he backed up.
They're old.
There's some old, and there's
Old Man River, dude.
There's like lack of upside for the guys that are behind his guys. So like, if you look at Zeke and Harris, like fine, like if everything goes right, they'll get you touchdowns. Fine. They'll be fine. But if something goes wrong, like Ronald Jones, Marlon Mack, and Jamal Williams, what is their upside? Like, what are we talking about?
RB1.
I don't think so.
What?
Daryl was an RB1. Daryl was an RB1 when.
All right. Well, you had a chance to talk about this team. So
you asked.
No, I didn't. Rhetorically, yeah. So, anyways, so my thing is like it just lacks the upside for me. But again, I would agree with Johnny that it's a contender because basically this comes down to player takes. This whole thing, like, because the roster as it sits right now, Devontae Adams is a wide receiver 1. DJ Moore is a wide receiver 2. Elliott is probably a back end running back 1. Damian Harris probably an RB 2. So like, if you look at it, yes, everything should hit, and that I think is a playoff team. I don't know if I'd go contender because again, I think what you want is to hit this, but we always do this, and in mock drafts it kind of fits for the content. This won't be his team, like this is how it goes. And so like, there's going to be a lot of shuffling there. So for me, I think it's a playoff team for sure.
Playoff team for you, Travi. What about you, Joel?
I feel like I have to say this is a championship contender because he was drafting right next to me and he got me more than once. I mean, he got me on Andrews, got me on DJ Moore, got me on Albert O. I know, I'm a big fan of his. I think he nailed the format, right? I think Harris is a big touchdown guy. Thielen's going to be a big touchdown guy. In a half PPR, touchdowns are important. So Zeke, he's going to score a ton of touchdowns. Andrews is going to score. Adams is going to score a ton. I like getting Burks and Wilson there. I think one of those guys will hit. I think you increase your odds by taking two. I like this team a lot. I definitely playoff plus, probably a contender.
All right. I got him as a playoff squad. I'm just not feeling as good about the running backs on this. I'm a little on the lower side, but strongly in the playoffs for me. Way to go, bro, Cal. Moving on here to Z's team, who in the 9th round takes Najee Harris as his RB1. He gets A.J. Dillon in the 5th as his RB2. Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds there around 7 and 8, with Tyrion Davis-Price there, running back out of San Francisco, in the 12th. Mike Evans is his first wide receiver, selected round 2. Deontay Johnson, Cortland Sutton in rounds 3 and 4. Juju Smith-Schuster is, I said that weird. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be his in the 6th round. It's his 4th wide receiver. Tyler Boyd in the 10th. Van Jefferson there in the 13th. His quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. He gets in round 11. TJ Hawkinson is his tight end, selected there in round 9. Joel, how did Z do?
I mean, what's not to like about this team, right? Harris and Dillon, I'm good with that as my RBs. Evans, Deontay, Sutton, I like that a lot. Hawkinson in the 9th,
that was awesome.
That's really good. Rodgers in the 11th. The only thing I'd worry about is having Najee and Deontay on the same team. Is that team going to score enough to carry 2 targets on the same team? That would make me a little nervous. Otherwise, I like everything about this team.
Okay. Championship contender for you?
Definitely.
All right. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm right there. I think this will be one of the championship teams. I love everything about it. The only thing I might tweak on it would be having Cole Kmet over Hawkinson on this team. If that was the case, I would be like, he's probably going to win the championship. But even with Hawkinson on there, I still think Hawkinson will be a top 8 tight end this year. So, I love this team. I think this is really well done.
What about you, Travi?
Yeah, it's a contender. I think similar to Brocal's team, when we look at like the setup and like the guys behind him, there is upside. Tyler Boyd's a great contingency plan. Juju Smith-Schuster, great upside play. Hunt and Edmonds and even TDP, all upside swings at the running back position, I think, that can really pay off. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to poke holes. I think Joel said it right with Deontay Johnson, but like as your 3rd wide receiver, because you got such a value on Sutton, and again, with the other guys you have behind him, like I think this is a smash. It's a contender. And it's no surprise our guy ZK, dude. He's over there grinding for football guys and PFF. So give him a follow on Twitter.
Give him a follow on there. It's like an unsexy contender for me too. I want to like kind of shade it, but it's solid everywhere. Even with like AJ Dillon, because it's your 2. Najee Harris is such a great anchor running back. Mike Tomlin's already said they're going to have to make him a bell cow. They're playing to win. They always are. Dillon, Hunt, Edmonds, even TDP. Someone's going to fill in your RB2, and you got enough talent on the other positions. You can fill in a wide receiver at your flex. Doesn't matter. I like it. All right. Don Flick now in the 10th takes Stephon Diggs, with his 2nd wide receiver being Drake London, all the way down to the 7th round. He goes on a little bit of a run now with wide receivers. Tyler Lockett in the 8th, Christian Watson in the 9th, Mecole Hardman in the 12th. Round 2 and 3, he goes tight ends with Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts. Spicy selection. I'm interested in the panel's breakdown now. Josh Allen, he's the first quarterback off the board. He's going to Donnie's squad. Wow. And that's the whole breakdown on Donnie's team. So we've got 2 amazing tight ends there in Kelce and Pitts. He's got the number 1 quarterback in Josh Allen. He doesn't take a wide receiver until a running back until round 5. But he takes some with some interesting upside on this. Travi, it's over to you to give the initial breakdown.
Yeah, this one's hard to dissect because you got to try and look at what he gave up to get the 2 tight ends special. So he's starting the tight end at flex, I'm assuming, right? You've got Kelce and then Pitts in your flex, which means you have your 3 wide receivers or Diggs and a combination of London, Lockett, Watson, and Hardman. That's a little scary for me. So then that's where he kind of sacrificed. So if we look at running back, like, I think that's better because obviously you anchored it with Diggs. But if you look at running back, you've got to get a combination 2 of Mitchell, Walker, Carter, Madison, and Mostert. I can get there, especially on Mitchell. I think a lot of the hate's been a little bit too much because we're like recency bias with the 49ers. We're saying, oh, well, this happens every year that they change it over. If they had it their way, would they have changed it over every year? Mm-hmm. You know, I think Mitchell is a guy they like a lot, and they're going to run. Now, he could get hurt, and every running back has. But I think, you know, if we're drafting for what's supposed to be week one, Mitchell's a good, you know, you can anchor it down with like a low-end RB1, upside RB2 there. And then it's just like trying to
hope Mostert's healthy week one then.
And then you got to try and get some of those other guys there for out of wide receiver. So it's a little bit scary. I think it's hard because it's talented. Like the tight end and Diggs and Allen, like that would scare the shit out of me every week. Like it could hit huge ceilings. I just don't. I think I'll go bubble team because of the question marks at running back and wide receiver.
What about you, Joel?
I'm going to say out of the playoffs because I think this is really a 3-man team, and Allen, Diggs, and Kelsey, which, you know, it's 3 elite players, but everything after that, I mean, Pitts is going to be your flex. Yeah, I just don't see where everything else is a gamble. I mean, London at your wide receiver 2, you get London and Pitts on the same team. Is that off?
Falcons,
you know, is Mariota going to support 2 guys that you can rely on them both week to week? You know, Lockett, you got Lockett and Walker on the same team. I think you're going to have some really down weeks. I really struggle with this team.
You got some low flying bird squads with the Falcons and the Seahawks. Right?
Yeah. It'll be duck hunting season early for Donnie and this team. That's
birds that hit the skyscraper window. That's what they're.
What about you, Johnny? What's your grade for Donflict?
Yeah, I think he's out of the playoffs on this one. I don't like the run. I think, you know, again, going into week one, sure, you might be able to patch some holes, but beyond that, like, I think every single week you're trying to fill, you know, patch holes that just keep popping up, and pretty soon your boat is sunk. So, I don't like it.
I'm just going to give him on the bubble because I appreciate the effort, and this is a fun team. This is one of the most fun teams I'm looking at on the whole squad. I mean, it just is. But I don't know if it's going to be that good. But I don't want to discourage fun, so we're going to go on the bubble here. Yeah. All right, and our last draft here to break it down before we bid you adieu is Albert M1218 in the 11 takes Johnny's boy Dalvin Cook and pairs Joe Mixon in the second round with him. He gets Tony Pollard now in the 8th. With James Cook, his brother, Dalvin Cook's brother, that is, in the 9th to be his 4th running back. Michael Pittman Jr. is his wide receiver 1, takes him in round 3. Jalen Waddle, round 4. Rashad Bateman, round 6. Elijah Moore, round 7. And then 11, 12, and 13 are all wide receivers with Johan Dotson, Tolbert, and Osborne with Minnesota. Darren Waller, tight end number 1 for Albert. He gets him in round 5. And Dak Prescott is his quarterback. He takes him in round 10. I'm seeing a bit of a value-based draft, I think, on this one, Johnny. What are you seeing, and what is your grade?
This is a really good team. Albert, he had a really good draft last week, and I think we all thought maybe he won last week. I think he probably won this week as well. I love every single pick that he made here. I think he picked them in the right places. They're a good amount of upside, somewhat limiting his downside. And like he got some steals and getting Darren Waller in the 5th, getting Dak all the way in the 10th, and then the 3 wide receivers at the end that are high upside. If anything ever happens to Thielen, we know Osborne can produce. Tolbert is hype train galore right now. At this part in July, and then Dotson. I wasn't a huge fan of Dotson, but a lot of insiders are really in on him. So, but again, those are at the end as his lotto tickets. I think having Pittman, Waddle, and Bateman, and I am a fan of Elijah Moore. I just really dig this team.
What about you, Travi?
Would have liked to see him get a couple more running backs down below where he like in the 11th, 12th, 13th. But I don't mind those picks. But he did so well at wide receiver. Like it's definitely a playoff team. I think it could be contender if he got a little bit more RB depth. Because although I love Pollard, I think everybody loves Pollard and he's talented. We've just seen that the Dallas Cowboys love Zeke and mathematically want to get him involved. So that's where I'm at. But I love this combo of Pittman, Waddle, Bateman, and Moore. Like, Give me 3 of those guys every week, and I think I'm going to be all right. So I really like the squad, and I think it's a playoff team, playoff plus. You know.
Yeah. How about you, Joel?
Yeah, absolutely. The talent's there for sure. Cook and Mixon's a great start, and then like those guys said, Pittman, Waddle, Bateman, Moore. You're gonna find 3 guys to start out of that. You're probably winning the flex almost every week. Love Waller. I share Travis' concerns about his backup running back, especially Cook, but you know you can find a backup on the wire, or you can trade with the 0 RB guy. I'll trade you something. Prescott, and then Prescott in the 10th. That's great value. Nice. I like Dotson. I love this team. This is playoff plus, definitely, probably a contender.
Right on. I'm right there with you. Way to go, Albert, and way to go, Whisper Nation. We got another mock draft Monday behind us, a 4th of July special here with Joel Wirth. Joel, it was awesome chopping it up. You know, we definitely had Whisper Nation enjoying it too. Calvin coming in, Jersey J enjoying the additional fantasy perspectives that you brought in. Man, can you let Whisper Nation know where they can find you, and if you got anything you're working on that they should keep an eye out for, Joel?
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. It was a blast. Really had a great time. You can find me at Club Fantasy FFL. I did a couple of recent write-ups on the site's doing we're going through every team, writing up one player from each team. I've done write-ups for DJ Moore and Khalil Herbert, who, as I said, is my sleeper special of the year for this year. And I've got more coming up with Travis Kelce, Aaron Jones, and Mike Evans. And I write the Blurred Lines football betting column during the season, so you can find me every week there.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. Whisper Nation, do yourself a favor. Go out and follow the man. We've got links in the description as well if you didn't catch those. Big Travie, Johnny Game Time Hicks, any closing words for the crew?
Mock Draft Marathon, top of this month. Make sure you guys are subscribed, and we'll be rolling out a ton of people, ton of big names this year. We're almost fully booked, so we're excited for that. 24 straight hours of mock drafting on YouTube, our 4th annual. So again, make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube channel.
Thank you for that. Forgot to drop the hype video into this mock draft, but you could check that one out on YouTube as well. And we'll be sure to see all of you, Whisper Nation, on the mock draft marathon. It is a kick-ass time. Johnny, any closing words for the crew?
Have a wonderful rest of your holiday, and appreciate you all for tuning in to today's show.
Love you guys all so much, and there's not a thing you can do about it. I'm Austin Sear. That's Johnny Game Time Hicks. There's Big Travie. We're the Fantasy Whispers. We're out. Peace.
Right here.
Hey, do you like mock drafts? We do too. You can come back every Monday and mock with us. Check out one of these videos and make sure you're liked and subscribed.